So, welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Prelims Powerplay. So, as you all know, that in this lecture series, we are covering the entire year's important current affairs. We have divided all these entire year's important current affairs into subjects, and then we'll cover each and every subject one by one. Now, with this lecture series, we have started with economics, but don't worry, we will cover other subjects as well just before your prelims examination. Now, within economics, we had started with external sector. As you all know, we have covered economic growth, banking, finance, fiscal policy, budget. And now, yesterday, we started with external sector. So let's continue with that. Now, in today's lecture, with respect to external sector, we will cover 4 topics that I have extracted out of previous 1 year's current affairs. And these are very important topics, okay? Chances are, high chances, there is very high probability that questions might be asked from today's lecture, okay? So please pay close attention. Now, topic number 1 is related to India's trade deficit. The topic we are going to cover today will be related to India's trade deficit, why widening trade deficit might seem like a concerning thing, but it's not that concerning after all. Okay, so topic number 1 would be India's trade deficit. Topic number 2 would be with respect to China +1 strategy. This is a very fascinating concept, and India had the opportunity of taking all the benefits out of this China +1 strategy that the Western countries, developed countries, were employing. So, what is this China +1 strategy and what opportunities it laid in front of India? We'll talk about this. Then, the third topic was related to India Russia trade deficit. And why? Because of that. Well, Chinese currency Yuan gained a lot. So this is known as the Yuan challenge. Because of India-Russia trade deficit, Chinese currency Yuan gained a lot and the efforts of rupee internationalization suffered. So we'll talk about that. And in the end, the fourth topic would be related to H-1B visa issue. Many Indians work in US and they work using H-1B visas that the US government issues. So what are these H-1B visas? Because as soon as Donald Trump got elected, well, many conservatives or right-wing people in USA were talking against H-1B visas and saying that Indians are immigrating to US using this H-1B visas. Now, there were some voices of support for H-1B visas, but some conservative members were talking about scrapping this visa program altogether, right? So that is why H-1B visas were in the news and why we are talking about something that American domestic politics is talking about. Is that H-1B visas are very important for Indians who want to emigrate to US and provide their services. So what are H-1B visas? We'll talk about that. So these are the 4 topics that we will zero in our attention on. So let's start discussing them one by one in today's Prelims Powerplay lecture. Okay, let's start with topic number 1, which is trade deficit. Okay, now hear me out carefully. You see, the thing is that generally trade deficit is considered bad. Okay, first of all, what is trade deficit? Well, we export a lot of goods, we import a lot of goods. Now, trade deficit occurs if we import more than we export. Okay, so if we import more than we export, then we have a trade deficit. If we export more than we import, then we have a trade surplus. Now, China runs a trade surplus. China exports a lot. But India conventionally runs a trade deficit. Okay? So, trade deficit is basically the amount by which your imports exceed your exports. So, if India is importing $100 billion of goods and exporting $60 billion of goods, then India's trade deficit would be $40 billion, the difference between the two. The thing is that trade deficit is generally considered bad. Any layman would consider trade deficit to be bad. Everyone knows that exports are good for your economy and imports are bad for your economy. Everyone knows this, right? When you export something, well, money comes into your country. When you import something, money goes out of your country because you're buying those things from abroad, so you're giving money to abroad, right? So basically, exports act as injection to your GDP, whereas imports act as leakage to your GDP, right? And that is why trade deficit is considered bad. This is conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom not among economists, but among everyone. But the thing is, many experts and many economists believe that trade deficit is not so bad after all. It's not that bad. If you keep trade deficit under control, it's not that bad. In fact, it gives you a lot of benefits. India should run a controllable amount of trade deficit. Trade deficit gives you a lot of benefits. Now, that is counterintuitive, right? How can trade deficit be good? Well, that's what we are going to understand in this particular topic. Okay, we will understand the opinions of economists who say some amount of trade deficit is always good. Clear? Okay, so let's start with this topic, India's trade deficit and how controllable amount of trade deficit can be good. Now, to understand how trade deficit can be good, you need to understand another concept which is called balance of payment. Okay, some of you already know about it, but for those who are completely unaware about it, okay, I will try to explain this concept of balance of payment in brief, and then we'll try to understand why trade deficit, controllable amounts of trade deficit, is good. Okay, now simply put, balance of payment is basically the entire account of money coming into India, money going out of India. So RBI basically maintains this account. Okay, RBI maintains this list. In this account, RBI keeps a track of all transactions that are bringing money into India, all transactions that are taking money out of India. So whenever India is conducting any transaction with the rest of the world, not domestic, within India, transactions between India and abroad, all those transactions would be listed down in this balance of payment, and this list is maintained by RBI. Now, this entire balance of payment is divided into two parts. Okay, current account, capital account. Okay, now within current account there are two parts: trade balance, invisibles balance. Okay, so trade balance contains import export of goods. Mind you, I'm talking about goods only, not services. Okay, so when you import something, it is listed down in this trade balance or trade account. When you export something, it is listed down here. Mind you, again, I'm talking about goods, not services. Services are also imported and exported, but it's not written in this part. Okay, now let's suppose India imports $40 billion of goods. So it will be written minus $40 billion. Why have we written minus? Because money is getting out of India. When we import something, we take the good and give money. So money is getting out of India. So it's written with a minus sign. Okay. And when we export, let's suppose our exports were plus $20 billion. Okay. Why have we written plus sign? Because money is coming into India. Right. So this is your trade balance. In net terms, India is running a trade deficit of, in this example, minus $20 billion, right? Because our imports are more than our exports by $20 billion. So trade deficit of minus $20 billion, right? Within invisibles balance, well, there is services import export. Okay, import of services, export of services, import with minus sign, export with plus sign. Then there are remittances. Many Indians who are working abroad send money back home to their family and friends. Well, when they send money back, well, plus sign. And when foreigners working in India send money back to their countries, minus sign. Okay, this is known as invisibles balance. Within invisibles balance, services trade is there, remittances are there. Clear? Now, if in the entire current account, trade plus invisible, if minus sign is heavy, minus sign, that means in net terms, money is getting out of India, right? So if minus sign is heavy, we say India is running a current account deficit. Okay. And if plus sign is heavy, we say India is running a current account surplus. Generally, India runs a current account deficit only. Okay, what happens is generally we run a trade deficit. But in terms of services trade, we export more than we import. In terms of services trade, we run a trade surplus. When I'm talking about only services. But when it comes to goods, we run a deficit. But our trade deficit is so large that invisible surplus is not able to compensate for it. And overall, we run a current account deficit. Okay, so this is your current account. I hope you got it. All right. So just remember that if overall minus sign is heavy, we say current account deficit. If overall plus sign is heavy, we say surplus. Generally, India runs a current account deficit. Okay. Now, when it comes to capital account includes foreign investments and borrowings from abroad. Borrowings, when you borrow money. So, when foreign investment is coming into India, plus sign. When foreign investment is getting out of India, minus sign. Similarly, if India is borrowing money from abroad, plus sign. When India is paying back its loan, okay, minus sign. Clear? Makes sense. Now, if there is net plus in capital account surplus, and if there is net minus in capital account deficit. Generally, India runs capital account surplus. Yes, we generally run current account deficit, but in terms of capital account, we are in surplus. Okay. Now let's talk about overall balance of payment. If within overall balance of payment, there is minus sign, then overall balance of payment is in deficit. If there is plus sign, overall balance of payment is in surplus. Simple. Now, here this one more thing. RBI also maintains basically forex reserves, foreign exchange reserves. So whenever there is balance of payment surplus, well, the amount by which there is balance of payment surplus, that amount increases forex reserves. So if balance of payment surplus is $20 billion, RBI's forex reserves would go up by $20 billion. Basically, if within balance of payment there is extra money coming into India, that money would go to forex reserves. So RBI's forex reserves increase. And if there is a deficit, that means there is extra money getting out of India, that money goes out of forex reserves. So if there is balance of payment deficit, then forex reserves decline. Okay, make sense? Simple. Now hear me out carefully. And this is very important. Here you'll understand why trade deficit is not so bad after all. Okay. Let's suppose in capital account, India ran a surplus of $100 billion. Okay. Surplus. India got this extra money in capital account, maybe because of foreign investment, or maybe India borrowed a lot. So our capital account was net surplus by $100 billion. Okay. Make sense? Now, we ran a current account deficit of, let's suppose, $80 billion. Okay. Now, what is happening? This extra $100 billion that is coming to India, $80 billion of this extra money went away in current account deficit. Yes, $100 billion came to India, $80 billion went away from India in current account. So now we are left with just $20 billion. Okay, extra. This extra $20 billion would go to Forex. Simple. Yes. Make sense? So can I simply say that this capital account surplus is equal to some of it is used to compensate current account deficit and some of it adds to forex reserves. Yes, makes sense. That is simple. Clear? Now the thing is, and this is very important, we only need limited amount of forex reserve. We cannot have too much forex reserve because keeping this extra cash of money, dollars, forex reserve is expensive for the government. Therefore, government only keeps that much forex reserve that it requires. That's all. Okay, not more than enough. Clear? Now, this is simple mathematics. If India is not running current account deficit, then there won't be any capital account surplus. Okay, let's suppose India does not have any forex reserve. So the money coming in is going to compensate for current account deficit. If there is no current account deficit, there won't be any capital account surplus. This is simple mathematics. Okay. So if India wants foreign investment, which is very important for India, India is a capital hungry country. We need foreign investment. So if India wants foreign investment, India needs to run limited amount of current account deficit, limited amount of trade deficit. This is very important. And that is why some amount of trade deficit is important. Okay. That was the entire purpose of this article. So remember this equation. Just remember that beyond a certain limit, we can't keep forex reserves. Therefore, if we really want foreign investment to come into our country, we need to run current account deficit. Currently, India's current account deficits are at healthy levels, 2% of our GDP. There was a time when our current account went into surplus. That was in financial year 2019. But generally, we run a current account deficit. But if that current account deficit is within 2% of GDP, we consider it healthy, we consider it advantageous. Because that means we are getting extra foreign investment through capital account. And we need that extra foreign investment if we really want India to become Vikasit Bharat by 2047. Clear? That's the whole point of this article. Okay. So benefits of current account deficit. Forex accumulation, we get forex reserves, foreign capital inflows, and India should work on its comparative advantage rather than absolute advantage. Look, rather than being excellent in everything, India should focus on things that it is good at. Okay, India is good at services export. India is not good at goods export. Now, we can't force ourselves to be good at goods export. So we should double down on our services export. India is good at receiving foreign investment. Okay. So this is our comparative advantage. Services exports are our comparative advantage. Rather than looking for absolute advantage where we have everything excellent, that is not possible. India should focus on its comparative advantage. All right. Make sense? Now let's talk about second topic, which is China plus one opportunity. Now, what is this opportunity all about? It's a fascinating concept. As you all know that the entire world's output, 1/3 of the world's exports come from China. China is the biggest supplier of goods and services, mostly goods to the world. Most of the goods that are consumed by the entire world come from China. Now that increases the dependency of the entire world on China. Okay, the entire world is reliant on China. Now many countries in the West, especially in the West, the developed countries are looking to diversify from China. They want to reorient their supply chains away from China. They want to remove most of these factories away from China and in the rest of the world's countries because they don't want to exclusively depend on China. Exclusively depending on China makes you a lot vulnerable because China has control over your goods and services, right? Therefore, Western countries wanted to basically move away from China. Now, that means that many foreign manufacturers would want to set up their factories away from China into other countries. Okay. Now, this gives India an opportunity. India can invite all these countries, all these companies to set up their factories who are taking away their factories away from China to set up their factories in India. This would bring in a lot of foreign investment into India. This would bring in a lot of jobs into India, lot of economic output into India. India will become a manufacturing giant if this happens. Now, this opportunity is known as China plus one opportunities, because most of the foreign companies now were thinking about setting up their factories in other places apart from China. China plus one. Now, India could have been that plus one, right? Many Western countries were looking for that. But recently, many articles were published in the newspaper and they found out that this did not happen. India failed to take advantage of this opportunity, and there were many reasons for that. But still, India failed to take advantage of those opportunities. So let's talk about this issue. Okay, so you understand what is China plus one opportunity? China plus one opportunity means that countries want to set up their factories in other places apart from China. So India could have been this plus one. Now, the thing is, the major reason why Western countries were looking for China plus one strategy is China Shock 2.0. In recent times, China started selling or exporting, and you have to hear this carefully. China started exporting extremely cheap goods into different countries. Extremely cheap goods into different countries. Okay, this extremely cheap goods being exported to different countries amounted to dumping. So China was making extremely cheap goods and dumping them into different countries. Now, why were these countries being bothered? Okay, the thing is that if China is able to sell this pen in India for very cheap, Indian pen manufacturers would suffer, right? Domestic industry would suffer. So domestic industries were suffering a lot, or domestic industries of these developed countries were suffering a lot because of this China dumping of goods by China. Now, this is known as China shock. This happened recently. And why it's called China shock 2.0? Why it's called 2.0? Because there was China shock 1.0. There was China shock 1.0 in 2001. This was the year when China joined WTO. So many countries allowed Chinese exports. Because of that, China started dumping their goods in different countries in 2001 because it was now a member of WTO. So that was called China Shock 1.0. And now recently, China again started dumping these goods, and this is called China Shock 2.0. That was the problem. Okay. Now, because of this China Shock 2.0, many Western countries started talking about moving away from China. And that is where China plus one strategy comes in. Now, if India had capitalized on this China plus one strategy, India could have benefited a lot. Okay, benefited a lot. India could have gained a lot of jobs, foreign investment, GDP growth, a lot. But India could not. Okay, and there were a few reasons for that. Okay, reason number one was, what is India's case? In India, already, capacity utilization is 70%. What do you mean by that? Well, capacity utilization is, I'll give you an example. Let's suppose I have a factory that manufactures these pens. Okay. Now, I can manufacture 100 pens in 1 year. This is the capacity of my factory. This is the amount of machines, laborers I have. But I am only manufacturing 70 pens. That means there is not enough demand for pens in the market, right? That is why I'm only manufacturing 70 pens despite having the capacity of manufacturing 100 pens. Yes or no? So my capacity utilization is 70%. In India, private companies' capacity utilization is very low. That means that Indian private sector is not being able to sell its goods and services. Okay. And that definitely means that we are not exporting a lot. Our exports are low. That is proof that our China plus one strategy has failed. Okay. There has been slowdown in private investment. Clear? Now, one way through which we can still become a part of this China plus one strategy is, and Niti Aayog CEO BVR Subramaniam said that there are still ways through which we can do that. Number one is, we can join regional groupings like Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, Okay, Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. These are regional economic groups. We will have free trade agreements with these groupings, and we will be able to export a lot. But we are still not becoming a part of RCEP because China is also part of RCEP. And if we become part of RCEP, then it will be like having a free trade agreement with China. China will dump more goods into India. Okay. So this is something we can increase our exports by joining this, but it has an added disadvantage, and that is China might dump goods into India. We can also reduce tariff barriers, especially on raw materials. Tariffs on raw materials so that manufacturing in India becomes easier, foreign investors come to India. Okay. Plus, there is slowdown in private investment, so we should encourage foreign investment. Now, some people are making a case for encouraging Chinese investments into India because USA is imposing tariffs on China. Many Chinese companies are setting up their factories outside China. So they have a pile of money and they're ready to invest in different countries. Right? Now, India can be that country where Chinese investment can come to India. India will get this much needed foreign investment. India will grow. But we all know why we are ready to have any foreign investment except China. There is a case for Chinese investments in India, but we are still not ready for that because we don't consider China to be our friend, and we really think that these Chinese investments into India would be more of a threat than gain. Right? So that is the thing. Clear? Now let's talk about the third topic, and that is Yuan challenge. Now, what do we mean by Yuan challenge? Okay, we in yesterday's lecture we did talk about rupee internationalization, right? And what did we mean by rupee internationalization? Well, we had agreements with Russia and UAE to settle all our transactions, import export transactions in rupees. Okay, what do we mean by that? So if we are importing Russian oil, we make payments for those Russian oil in rupees, not dollars. If we are exporting something to Russia, Russia will make us payments in rupees, not dollars. Okay. And the reason why Russia agreed for that is because, well, there were American sanctions on Russia because of Russia-Ukraine war. So Russia could not trade in dollars. So Russia was looking to do import-export in other currencies, right? So India stepped in, and India said that, okay, let's basically settle all our transactions in rupees. This was the effort towards rupee internationalization. We did talk about this in the previous lecture when I explained to you what Vostro accounts are, right? So rupee internationalization efforts were being done, but now recently Chinese exporters are saying to Indian people who are buying Russian goods that please do not make us payments in rupees, please make us payments in Chinese currency, that is yuan. Okay, we internationalize rupee. We said that we will have transactions in rupees, but Russians are saying that please don't make us payments in rupees, please make us payments in yuan. That is more beneficial for us, not rupees. Now, how did that happen? India's efforts of internationalizing rupee, starting with Russia, failed. Why? Let's talk about this, okay? So the Yuan challenge. So within Yuan challenge, we'll talk about rupee internationalization. So what was the efforts of rupee internationalization? Look, Russia and India trade. Okay, Russia exports some goods to India, mostly Russian oil. India exports some goods to Russia. Okay, so goods coming from Russia are India's imports. Goods going out of India to Russia are India's exports. Okay, now we decided that when we import something from Russia, okay, when we'll import something from Russia, we will make them payments in rupees. Okay, now why is Russia accepting rupees? Because we are saying that we are telling Russia that, look, Russia, keep these rupees, and when you'll import something from us, you make us payments in those rupees. Simple. So we will make you payments in rupees, and when you need to buy something from us, you can use those rupees. Simple, plain and simple. Earlier we were doing all of this in dollars, now let's do this in rupees. Now, this really helped India because it reduced India's dependence on US dollars. And it helped Russia also because Russia was able to sell its goods and services without using dollars because dollars were banned in a sense for Russia. Right? So this was good. But this became a problem. Why? Because India runs a huge trade deficit with Russia, which means, which means that Russia exports or India imports a lot of goods from Russia. Okay? But Russia doesn't buy that much from India. Okay? India's exports to Russia are minimal, but India's imports from Russia are a lot. So if India is making payments in rupees and Russia is not buying that many goods and services from India, then what good are these rupees collected with Russia? Russia would say, what would I do with these rupees? Because in any case, I'm not buying that much from you. Right? So trade deficit with Russia is a huge problem for India because that reduces the attractiveness of rupees. Okay. Now, India lost a huge opportunity of internationalizing rupee in this case. There was an opportunity for India because Russia was made a pariah by America. Okay. America banned usage of dollars for Russia. So Russia was looking for alternative currencies. India could have basically seized this opportunity. But India's exports let India down. We couldn't export that much to Russia, and that is why our efforts of rupee internationalization were not that successful. But what happened? In the meanwhile, where India failed, China succeeded. China seized this opportunity. There was an incredible rise of exports to Russia from China. China was selling so many goods to Russia. Okay. Plus, China Russia trade is balanced. That means their imports and exports are relatively equal. Okay. China imports equivalent amount of goods from Russia than it exports. So there is balanced trade between the two. Now, when there is balanced trade between the two, now Russians have a lot of value for Yuan. So when China buys something from Russia, it makes payments in Yuan, and Russia is ready to accept those payments in Yuan because Russia knows that it has to buy certain things from China also. It will buy. It is already buying. So it will use these Yuans there. So Yuan is more acceptable to Russia. In fact, Russian exporters are saying that, well, Russian exporters basically are saying to Indians, okay, that please give us payments in Yuan because Yuan is more valuable for us. We can buy things from Yuan. Rupees has no utility for us. So they are even telling India to make payments in Yuan. Now that is completely unacceptable for India, right? And the only reason is that we do not export that much to Russia. Now, why aren't we able to export that much to Russia? The thing is that exports are financed by banks. Banks actually provide credit for these export operations, import export operations. Now, most of private banks in India are scared of American sanctions. These private banks do business in USA also. And they are scared that if they will facilitate trade with Russia, USA will take action against them. And they are scared of that. So that is why private banks in India, not government banks, private banks in India are not providing that much finance for export operations to Russia. And that is a big challenge. That is why Indian exports to Russia have declined. Okay. Now that doesn't mean that the Indian government is not doing that much. Indian government has taken certain steps to encourage exports from India to Russia. Okay. What are these steps? First of all, India is ready to reduce tariff and non-tariff barriers between India and Russia trade. Okay, so that trade between India and Russia can flourish. India is reducing tariff and non-tariff barriers, and Russia is doing the same. Second, India is negotiating with Eurasian Economics Union. Eurasian Economic Union. Okay, who are the members of this EEU? Russia, Belarus, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. So because Russia is its member, a trade deal with EU would mean that India can easily export goods not just to Russia but to these countries as well. So this is there. Plus, both countries have said that we will sign agreements for joint manufacturing projects so that Russians can set up factories in India, Indians can set up factories in Russia, joint projects. So this might boost bilateral trade between the two. But many experts have said that India has lost that opportunity and China has completely seized that opportunity. Nonetheless, these steps would go a long way in helping India and Russia trade. All right. And that would be all as far as this topic is concerned. And let's move on to last topic of the day, which is H1B visa issue. Okay. So look, what are H1B visas? The thing is that there are many valuable American companies. Okay. Now, for long, American companies have complained that there are many skilled jobs in our country. Okay. In our company. So there are many, let's suppose there is an American company called Apple. Okay. Apple says that we have a lot of jobs in our company, but those jobs require highly skilled people. People who have done their masters in technical subjects, PhDs in technical subjects. Okay. We require highly skilled specialists for these jobs. But Apple says that we are unable to find Americans to be that skilled to be employed in these things, these roles. Okay. So Apple conveys that there are not enough skilled Americans to take these jobs. Therefore, Apple writes to American government that please allow us to hire foreign workers who are highly skilled for these jobs. Okay. American government allows them. But those foreign workers, when they'll come to America, they'll be issued a visa. That visa is called H1B visa. So H1B visa is only issued to highly skilled people for working in an American company. That's it. Now, around 85,000 H1B visas are issued every year, and most of these visas are taken up by Indians. Okay. Now, there was a bit of controversy with respect to H1B visas. Many in USA were saying that we should scrap away this H1B visa. We shouldn't allow Indians to come to USA and take our jobs. We should hire American workers. Okay, there was a bit of controversy. We shouldn't be interested in that controversy. What we need to know is what this H1B visa is. So let's talk about it. Okay, quickly. So H1B visa issue. So about this visa, these are non-immigrant visas that allow US companies to hire foreign workers in specialty occupations. Okay. The eligibility criteria for getting this visa. For example, I'm an Indian who wants to work in US by this visa, through this visa. So first of all, I need to produce a valid job offer from an American company. I need to have minimum educational qualifications, at least a graduation degree, possibly master's or a PhD degree. And that American company has to prove that there is a lack of qualified American workers. That is why we are hiring this Indian worker. Okay. These are the three conditions that need to be fulfilled to basically issue this visa. Now, every year, annually, 85,000 H1B visas are issued. So there is a quota in H1B visas. Okay. There is a cap. Not more than 85,000 H1B visas can be issued. So sorry. Yeah. So 65,000 visas among this 85,000 would be normal. And these extra 20,000 would be for highly skilled people who have minimum PhDs. Okay, highly skilled people. So total 85,000. Applicants are selected via lottery system. Clear? That is all. Okay. Now let me tell you, H1B visas are for all foreigners. But you know what? More than 70% of H1B visas issued every year are taken by Indians. Indians are the largest beneficiaries of these H1B visas. And people in America who are biased against Indians because of racism and all, they are talking against this H1B visas. People who are not that racist, Okay, people who are comfortable with Indians. Well, they are saying that H1B visas are helping American economy, is helping American economy because we are getting skilled workers from India who are contributing towards American economy, right? So this is the entire controversy. All right. And with that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And I'm sure it has added value. It is continuing to add value to your preparation. By the way, do not forget to revise the notes. Do not forget to practice those MCQs. Now, you might say, where are those notes and MCQs? Well, let me make an announcement. Tomorrow, all the notes of previous lectures and all the practice MCQs from the previous lectures and including today's lecture would be shared with you guys. So don't worry, those MCQs and those notes are coming. What you have to do is just revise those notes and practice those MCQs because this would really solidify your preparation. So please do not forget to do that. And on that note, I'll be signing off with the promise of seeing you again with another set of topics in this lecture series that we call Prelims Powerplay. Thank you, everyone.